Welcome to Modern Mind, Ancient Book, where we are going back to move forward. We're finding a love for the law, the prophets, and the writings. We are starting today with the book of James. This is the first book in the New Covenant, or the New Testament, to have been written and circulated as a letter.
Right.
My name is Roger, your host. If you'd like to reach out to us, please feel free. modernmindancientbook@gmail.com. Today we have Nick and Pete with us. Welcome,
Hello.
boys. How are you today?
Great. Good.
How are you?
Good. So, the book of James. The first book, right? AD 45.
Yep.
That's
Chronologically, the
first book.
Not long after Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not long after the resurrection. Let's start with date, right? So, it's an early date, 45 to 49,
Yep.
and it's to the church in Jerusalem. And it's written before the Gospels.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Its content is very practical.
Right.
Right? So, James, by all intent and purposes, was a very Jewish man. His name is actually Jacob, right?
Right.
So, another interesting tie, right? Like, I don't know how, I guess, divine it is or whatever, but, Jacob, Israel, and now the new church is found, headed kind of by Jacob.
Yeah, the framework is
it's
set forth by
there's
Jacob,
kind of these
yes.
motif things there, and
At a minimum, there's some poetry in there.
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just an interesting
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yep.
So he was important and part of the leadership in the Jerusalem church.
Right.
So, depending on what your tradition is, you might call, Peter the vicar of Christ,
Right.
the first
Right.
pope or whatever.
Right.
But in all reality, the early church was led by 3 or 4 people, really.
Right.
Right?
Right.
James, Peter, right?
Right.
There was a thing going on there. It was a conglomerate of people who had come together and pooled all their money and their resources because they thought Jesus was coming imminently.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't ruled by one person, right?
Right.
And, James was just a really important part of that. And he wrote this letter to Jewish believers before even the gospel had been spread to Gentiles. So this is before Paul,
Right.
even went out to go do his missionary journeys.
Right.
It's a really early letter. So, in his world, there were no problems between Jews and Gentiles with law or circumcision, as we see in the latter epistles, because these are converts to Judaism.
Right.
Right.
They're Jewish themselves, or Messianic.
Right.
Yeah, or if they are Gentile people, they've accepted the traditions
Right.
and the
Right.
ways,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Because this is Jerusalem, and it's just a Jewish faith.
Right. They're among
Right.
that already. They know it all. They're part of the system.
In the latter ones, you do start to see that, but that's
Right.
because Paul is branching out into
Yeah.
places farther away and converting.
Completely different people.
Yeah,
I
not
have no idea of the history.
That's
at all.
right, and then there began to be
Right.
The rift.
the rift, right? That sort of tension that is just always present in Jesus' movement. It's just always present in it. It's in the Old Testaments and the New Testaments everywhere. So this is a pastoral writing. It's not really doctrinal, right? This isn't necessarily a theological book. And the church meetings take place in synagogues.
Right.
Chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Which argues that very early date. The church structure seems to be kind of rudimentary. It's not outside of what Judaism was, in other words,
right.
right? So when we say the church structure, what we mean is it hasn't become a Gentile church
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't have elders and deacons and things.
Right.
There's no mention of the council in Jerusalem, which happened in AD 49,
Right.
and that's when there had to be that discussion about how do Gentiles
be
be
organized,
included in
yeah.
this
Yeah.
thing. Which, side note, but worth noting at this point, in the beginning of this movement, Christians, Messianics, Nazarenes, they said, well, how do we include Gentiles?
Yeah.
Now we're like, why would you want to do Jewish things?
Yeah.
Pendulum swung far the other way.
Yes.
Yeah, it swung really, really far. We are not balanced.
Right.
So, this is not a book about faith alone. That's an interesting part. Because James wants you to act out your faith.
Right.
A very Jewish book. It's also in tension, kind of, with these Pauline ideas.
Right.
But again, that's the tension of the Bible.
Right.
Because in all reality, if you ask me, I don't think Paul was arguing that you're just justified by belief. And I don't think James is arguing that you're just justified by action. Right?
Right.
It's a targeted audience for a specific reason.
Yes. And neither of them were speaking to the exclusion of the other half.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a conversation just today, I believe it was, with a friend of mine, where a Jewish man that we know, he said, well, your faith is easy. You don't have to do anything. Right?
Okay.
But you see what happens?
Yeah.
Right.
In Judaism, you have to practice righteousness.
Right.
Right? You have to keep the law. You have to attend synagogue. You have to go to services. You have to pray. You have to tashlik. You have to cast off sin. You have to do all these things.
So did you turn around and say, well, it's easy for you. You know exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how we come so far that a guy would be convinced that we don't have to do anything.
Well, we've dropped the ball in many ways.
Right.
And there's probably a small element of maybe he...
I don't think he necessarily understands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the guy's right. I just know that that's the image.
Right. I just also didn't want to make it sound like I was criticizing him unfairly by saying he doesn't know what he's talking about, when it's like, well, he does have some inkling, but maybe not quite the perception of reality.
Well, what I want to say is, do you know who Jacob is?
Yeah.
You should read his book in the New Covenant.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. It's not the Jacob you're thinking of, but there's a Jacob in the New Covenant that wrote a book that you might find interesting, because you do have to do some things.
He was a Jewish man writing to Jews.
That's right.
Just slipping that in there.
Slipping on in there. So let's go back here to the title now. So we call him James, and that's the Greek form of his name, right? James. But the Hebrew name is Jacob, Yaakov. And the Jacob meant supplanter, right? But now it's a revered name of faith and perseverance, because the original Jacob, the founding, or I don't want to say founding father, patriarch Jacob, he was changed after a faithful meeting with the angel of the Lord and given a new name.
Right, and as we've spoken in earlier episodes, the person who received the message, who was changed, who was chosen by God, is tremendously important. So it's not weird that would become a revered name, right?
Yeah.
Because that's highly important in the culture that
a celebrated name.
Yeah.
An honor.
Something you'd want to name your child.
Right. And it mattered to them more than it does to us a lot of times.
Yeah.
We don't have that priority.
I tried. I named my kid Jacob.
Yes.
You know?
Well, you're sort of exceptional.
So we got this guy Jacob, James, and he writes a Jewish book to Jewish people, and we call him James in our book for some reason. I wish we could just call him Jacob, That's who he is. So the letter claims to have been written by James, a servant of God, and the Lord Jesus Christ. chapter 1, verse 1. The lack of elaboration points to a well-known person.
Right.
And it's natural to think first of those men that took this name in the New Covenant or the New Testament. There's 4 of them. There's James, the son of Zebedee, brother of John, one of the 12 disciples. There's James, the son of Alphaeus, one of the 12. And there's James, the younger brother. And then there's James, the father of Judas. And James, the Lord's brother. So, where do we land here, right? It's not James, the father of Judas.
Right.
Right.
There are 4 Jacobs, though, in the story.
Yeah.
So of the 4, the last is by far the most obvious candidate for the author. Right. It's Jacob, the son of Mary, the brother of Jesus. Right? And it makes sense because he's prominent in the church, right? Obviously, he knew Jesus from his birth, Like James knows Jesus, and he has a conversion story, and then he's prominent in the church, so it makes sense. So there's a lot of similarity between the epistle of James and the speech attributed to James in Acts 15:13 through 21, where he, acting as a leader, says important things. Right? So, also, in keeping with the identification are the frequent allusions to the teaching of Jesus within the letter. The Jewish atmosphere of the book and the authority assumed by the author in addressing the 12 tribes in the dispersion, the early Christian testimony, we're not sure if it's James, the brother of Jesus, but it just makes a whole bunch of sense, right? So, he's mentioned in Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3, and then following the resurrection, Jesus appeared to his brother in 1 Corinthians 15:7, and that appearance to him made him really understand who Jesus was, and he became an important part of the church. He was with the group in the upper room at the ascension of Jesus in Acts 1:14, and when Paul returned to Jerusalem 3 years after his conversion, he saw Peter and James, the Lord's brother, Galatians 1:18 through 19. Following his miraculous deliverance from prison, Peter directed that the news should be given to Jacob, to James.
Right.
Apparently now a recognized leader in the church, Acts 12:17. Right. At the time of the Jerusalem conference, James was recognized as one of the pillars of the church, Galatians 2:9. And he took a leading part in the discussion at the conference. At the end of Paul's 3rd missionary journey, when he brought the offerings to the Judean saints, James was the revered leader of the Jewish Christians in Acts 21:18 through 25. So, I mean, he was, by all accounts, a faithful man. Right? And he was recognized numerous times throughout what, we call our Bible. Non-biblical references to James place special emphasis upon his Jewish character. In the account of Hygesippus,
Better you than me.
Hygesippus, preserved by Eusebius, says that he lived his life as a Nazarite. And spent so much time in prayer on his knees in the temple that his knees became hard like a camel's toe. So, what's one of the first things that Paul did when he had to prove his Jewishness? Took a Nazarite vow. Right? I wonder who led him to do that. I mean, there's a lot here that shows that Jacob had a very large role in the church.
And again, he was praying in the temple.
That's right.
So he hadn't been excommunicated even.
Yeah, and let's be fair, the church doesn't mean what we think the church means at this time. It means the ones who are called out. So they're Jewish people. They've been called out of the vast majority of Jewish people to become the Nazarene version of Judaism. But they still go to the temple. Right. They still practice all of the things that are Judaism. And James is very much a part of all of that. He lived a pious life. And he lived a strict life under the law. He was called James the Just. A title which implies not only his integrity, but his faithful adherence to the requirements of the Torah.
Right.
His rigid observance of the Torah secured for him the veneration of even unbelieving Jews. He was well known among Jewish people as being a man who kept Torah. So, yeah, James, the brother of Jesus, that's who it was. He died a violent death at the hands of Jewish leaders because of his influence in leading people to accept Jesus as Messiah. His violent death was openly condemned by the masses of the Jewish people. He was well regarded, and there was widespread conviction that the afflictions which shortly thereafter befell the city of Jerusalem were in punishment for the crime of his death. It's easy to see how a man so Jewish and so insistent upon practical morality could have written this letter.
Right.
So when do we talk about that when we preach James?
Right.
I've never heard it talked about. That he was a strict adherent to the Torah. That he lived his life as a Nazarite. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think most people are stuck in that, what we said earlier.
Right.
How does this apply to me?
Yeah.
You know, how do I fit this into the life I currently have?
Right.
Well, we got to do this though.
Oh, I'm not saying that's correct. No, right.
Yeah.
But I'm not answering as like, well, this is the answer to. I'm saying, how could we have arrived at this point? Well, because most of us are coming at it from an off base perspective to begin with.
A modern mind.
And with only a modern mind, we don't understand this stuff.
That's true. Right. Yeah, in the histories, I mean, who's reading Josephus to find out how he died, right?
I mean, I'm not.
Or Hesychius, like these letters. I mean, they're there. We can have them. Yeah, they're not that hard to find. But if you don't know what Hesychius is, it's a little bit hard to find it. But I mean, I fault Bible teachers in general. I mean, I found this stuff in Bible college, right? But when I sat under ministries, I went to school for 4 years. Right. And then I started a master's program. And the entire time I was doing it, I was sitting under professors who were saying all these things. And I was sitting under pastors who were saying none of these things. Okay. And I was like, guys, what part of... I mean, is academia really absolutely just cut off from the church?
It shouldn't be, but at times it is.
It just seems that way.
From both sides.
Well, and the thing is I often find, feedback we get every so often, right?
Yeah.
That you can't... Some things just go over people's heads, right? And so we have to kind of choose our words wisely, and we have to be careful. Right. And you can't use too many, theological terms and stuff that people don't understand and whatever. But I draw the line... Jacob was Jewish. I mean, I got to draw the line here. I've got to talk about this.
You use specifically theological words to communicate that point.
Yeah.
You just said it. And most concepts can be explained simply so people can understand. There are very few things that are so complex, so above people's heads that they can't be expressed in a way that people understand.
What I'm saying, though...
You get to quantum physics and stuff like that.
And even then, I mean, there are certain terms that people couldn't understand, but you can break it down in a way that...
But I couldn't preach the book of James without... saying this man was observant to Torah. Right. And he lived his life this way. And this is who he was. And he was the brother of Jesus. Right. And this is the family that Jesus grew up in. And this is how practical life was lived. Right. And this book tells you, New Testament, New Covenant believer, that it's important for you to live out Torah. That's what James is talking about. And so I know, though, for some reason, that's this weird, offensive thing. But it's the very first book that was given to believers.
Right.
That's why we're going back to move forward. I feel like we got to go back and look at the law and be like, oh, I guess it's really not that offensive or weird or strange or outside of the ordinary. And then by the time you get to James, you're like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of ours too, right?
Yeah.
Or at least the first church, does it belong? You have to wrestle with those questions, right? And then once you've wrestled with those questions, then you can bring it to the modern mind. Because there is application.
Yeah, sure.
It's not my place to tell you what it is. I think the Spirit has to do that. But I know for me, it's caused me to go, well, Jacob was Jewish and he practiced Torah. Well, I kind of want to do that too. Like, how do I make that fit? You know? And so I've been wrestling with that for years. But I'm glad I'm wrestling with it. And I don't know why we preach the book of James without saying the man was Jewish.
Right.
I don't know how many people are really aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I apologize to the listener. I know we're kind of ranting on this, but it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Just like Jesus's, 3.5-year ministry changed the world.
Right.
James was Jewish. I don't know.
All the apostles were Jewish.
Yeah. And they practiced Torah.
Yeah.
We made it weird, though.
Yeah.
Because I think some people, I mean, we do know that they were Jewish.
Right.
We know that. No, I don't know of any church leader that in
that
any
would
sort
say
of
anything
mainstream that would
worse.
say anything otherwise. But it doesn't necessarily sink in as that it matters, that it has any bearing on our understanding, which is weird because we made it weird.
Yeah.
It's not naturally that way.
Yeah, we gravitate toward the Pauline stuff where we can say, well, we don't have to practice the law, right? Or toward Acts where we're like, well, just abstain from meat strangled and fornication and, okay. But why don't we just wrestle with the other stuff too, right? Like, you still have to look at it, think about it, consider it, debate how it fits, debate what fits, teach how it fits or how it doesn't fit, but we just don't really do that in churches.
No, and we talked about this once before in a previous episode because I think that it is natural and normal, as much as we've made it weird to do these things, for people to accept the bare minimum.
Right.
Fair. Yeah.
And so, in this podcast, we're making the case for a little bit more than the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Bring the bar up a little bit.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, well, at least let's consider it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
We're putting it out there for consideration instead of just, here's the threshold for what you have, the minimum things.
Right.
Saying, maybe there's something to this other stuff. Maybe you might want to, just think about the layers underneath.
Yeah.
What came before the things that we've built our lives on.
My question is what blessings are we missing out on by not knowing or doing these
Now you're
things?
talking like the marketing department. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so the original recipients. Jacob wrote this
James.
to James.
He is Jacob, but I want to make sure we're clear.
Yes, the book of James, the epistle of James, is written to the 12 tribes who are dispersed abroad. He's writing this to Jewish people. He also addresses them several times as brothers. This strongly suggests that the recipients are Jewish, Messianic Jewish Christians who live throughout the regions of the Middle East. So he's sending this out.
Right.
He mentions that they have been born again through the Word of God and have continued to maintain their faith in Jesus Christ, or Yeshua. They are exhorted to be patient as they wait for the coming of the Lord, because they were waiting, during the times of trial and temptation. Jesus makes reference to the Old Testament without any supplemental explanations that may be necessary if his audience was Gentile. These people know the scriptures, right? The audience, although addressed as Jewish Christians, also includes some who may have professed Christ but not possess him. These are religious people who are part of the called out community but do not show the fruits of being born again in their lives. And that's like the action part, right? So, part of but not acting. They speak the words but don't have the works.
Right.
So James is probably writing from Jerusalem to the many Jewish believers who are scattered throughout the world. We know from Acts 2 that there were devout Jews from every nation in the city of Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost when the Holy Spirit came on the disciples. Those Jews were converted to Christ and went home to the nations with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, this recipients thing, I noticed this a lot, and this is a document I got from school that we're doing these from. Yeah. And what I see, this actually reflects theology, this statement. Because what it does is it says, well, these are just for Jewish people.
Right.
I don't think that's true.
No.
I don't think that's true at all. James is not written just to Jewish people. There is not a book in either what we call the Old Testament or the New Testament that's written to anybody other than the faithful.
Right.
If you've adopted the God of the Hebrews, then that's your history. If you've elected to follow Jesus as your king, then his ways and his practices are your ways and your practices. Mm-hmm. This recipient's part of this is a theological position.
Right.
And in these debates, they basically stopped happening. Like Hagee, right? There's a big church in Texas.
Yeah.
Right.
Where the Jewish people have their version of the covenant and we have ours.
Right.
Jesus didn't have more than one covenant. No. He had the new covenant.
Yeah.
That's what he made. He made a covenant that's for all people for all time.
Right.
Jewish and Gentile believers become one new man.
Right.
So, again, how theology becomes a mainstay in our thinking is really an interesting study for me because this is not my thinking.
Right.
When I first read the book of James and I learned that he was a devout Torah follower, my first thought was, well, he wrote this book to Jewish people and it doesn't apply to me. No, that wasn't my first thought. Right. My first thought was, well, wait a minute. If he was a devout Torah keeper and he was one of the main leaders in the Jerusalem church, I have to go to a Messianic synagogue now, right? Mm-hmm. That was my first thought.
Right.
So that's what I did. I went and I spent 10 years in a Messianic synagogue because what even is this? I don't even know what this is. Doesn't make sense to me. I've never seen it before.
Right.
And then after I got in it and got involved in it, I was like, wow, the holidays are amazing. The Bible it's even more alive than I thought it was. And I understand why James, keeps Torah. It's interesting stuff. The more you study it, the more you go, oh man, well that makes a lot of sense. I get it. It's not the same time frame. The words in the Torah have to be ran through a filter to apply to today. Right. But the principles are there. The facts are there. And the Torah absolutely applies to right now, this very minute. And Jesus said, summarize the Torah. Right. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. So how does that not apply to today? Right. So we want to be keepers of the Torah, but we don't understand it. So again, this recipients thing, and I really want this to land to the hearer. Theology says Jewish people have a way, Gentile people have a way. And we can land on any epistle any letter that Paul wrote, and we can make that our theology, that Gentiles just don't have to practice these things. It's not our thing. But if you take the totality of the documents, and the fact that Paul went to Jerusalem to figure out how to integrate Jews and Gentiles, because these pagan people were coming into the faith, but they didn't have the proselyte version of Judaism yet. How are we going to do this, right? Then you see the mainstay was Judaism, not Gentile ways, right? So the church was Jewish. And I have to settle on that because I can't settle on two different ways because Jesus is not divided.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. And I just... The New Testament for me is not different than the Old Testament.
Yeah, and it's good that you belabor the point, because I think that people do separate it, obviously, all the time. I mean, some people teach that from the pulpit, so it's definitely something that happens. It is interesting, though, because I didn't actually receive that the way that you did, which may be because of all the time that I've spent with you, not separating anymore. Yeah. But when I read this recipients thing, I kind of took it as, well, these were the people who received it, not necessarily it only applied to them. Like I didn't receive that from what was written here. I didn't take that as because they were the people who received it, it was only for them. That didn't say that here tonight. It was just, this is the historical fact of who it was written to.
That's right. I'm probably hypersensitive to it because I've had so many conversations over the years. I've went to so many different churches and had so many people tell me that, well, it's good that Jewish people practice that. It's really good. I'm glad they do.
But they're too far removed, right? No, but and I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, like, you're pulling the pendulum back that swung too far in one direction. So maybe there is some, what you call
a happy medium.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if there was some enhanced sensitivity, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just not everybody is going to interpret it that way.
Right. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you're off base, because my interpretation of this as just a historical thing and not prescriptive probably comes in large part because of you.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fair. I mean, it's been a few years now.
Yeah.
So my main contention, I guess, with now that we're in the New Testament, is that we are going to see this happen repeatedly over and over again. There's going to be a very large Jewish influence in everything we talk about. And the practices are going to be apparent.
Right.
And they're so valuable.
Right.
I want to highlight them. And I want to challenge the listener and us and our church and our sphere around us to not discount those experiences and those practices to just not be worth potentially practicing. Right? Or just exploring and then determining if they're worth practicing.
Yeah, I mean, understanding is a good place to start.
Yeah, just get some understanding.
Right.
I'm a bit of a radical. So when I read James, I found out that he was Jacob, the just, the one who practiced Torah. I was like, I'm going to a synagogue. I want to know what that is. Right. So, strange guy, right? But that's what I did.
Right.
And I really, really enjoyed it. It brought not only great insight into the Bible for me, but extreme blessings. Extreme blessings. I've sat under sukkahs and had food and talked with people and prayed to God and had wonderful moments, wonderful Old Testament moments, practicing a biblical holiday. It was amazing. And a beautiful thing that we created with our hands to God's glory, celebrating the harvest, right? And looking up at the moon and going, thank you for the moon. Wow, look at all these cool fruits that we hung from here, and citrons and lulavs, and these things were neat. And it was just a really great experience. And it just dawned on me that I didn't know anything about this before. Right. But now that I know about it, it's really valuable. And I understand why the Torah is valuable. And that's really the gist of it.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
To introduce people to this.
Yes. Yeah. So we want to read the book of James. Pedro, you want to take this one?
You are a new believer in Jesus Christ. He was new. This whole thing was new to everybody.
Yeah, this is AD 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, long, long time ago.
You believe that Jesus is the Messiah who is promised in the Old Testament. Jewish friends who were in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost have shared the gospel of Jesus Christ with you. You have experienced the power of the Holy Spirit working in your life. You want to grow in your Christian life. You are thankful for this letter because it gives you a basis of what it kind of codifies what you need to believe.
It's full of very Jewish practices. I assure you that.
And because there are 100 different versions probably already of what you need to believe and how you need to practice.
This is early enough to where there probably was just a lot of anxiety. Right. A lot of people weren't sure, right? All they knew is that Jesus taught for 40 days in this weird state
Right.
where he could appear in a room and disappear,
Yeah.
eat food. Right. It was just really weird.
Be touched. He had a physical
really.
body.
But I do understand what you're saying, Pete,
But
because there wasn't necessarily a prescription for what to believe.
Prescription.
There wasn't a-
Everybody was doing their own thing, kind of,
right.
for a while.
I mean, you ever been in a room with even 10 people who are supposed to be working on something, but no one's been instructed what to do? There's no code or system or laws or anything, but there's 10 people all doing something different.
Framework.
That's legit. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. The church hadn't formed yet. The Jerusalem church itself hadn't quite even become what it was to become.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's why James wrote the letter.
Right.
Yeah. So, key verse, as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. Yeah. What's the argument, Nick?
James argues that genuine faith produces maturity and good works in the midst of trials and temptations of life.
Yeah. James was a prayer warrior.
Yeah.
He spent his time in prayer. He spent his time in study. He spent his time in service. He was big into action.
He was serious about it, which is Jewish tradition to be big into action.
Yeah.
There you go. Right? And, he probably held the bigger spot in the Jerusalem church than Peter, just saying.
Yeah.
Being the brother of Jesus and all.
Look at you stepping on toes. But no,
I'm just saying.
It's true.
Just saying.
It's factually based,
there in the,
Yeah, some street creds there.
Yeah. And so...
And the history, the lineage would have been valuable in the Jewish.
Well, and it's also interesting that biblically it was Jacob who was changed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a motif. There's a whole bunch of stuff that plays into this. Mm-hmm. So, welcome to the book of James. We hope that it just whetted your palate to start wrestling with the tension between not only Jewish belief and practice, but also, you have to act your faith out. So, if you're a Christian that you made a confession silently and you eventually got baptized, which was a great act, it's good. And then from there, you're just kind of betting on that ticket. I fall more in love with the Bible. Fall more in love with who Jesus is. Fall more in love with interacting with the people around you. Fall more in love with your neighbor and your friends. Do more, be more a part of, be a bigger part of your church. Step out of your comfort zone. Quit being comfortable watching TV or whatever it is. And go be a part of the community. That's what James would tell you to do. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to reach out to us, modernmindancientbook@gmail.com. You're the best. We've enjoyed spending time with you.